What an honor it is to be here before our King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Yes.
You know, when you think about it, all he has to do is say a word and we just are no more.
That's right.
All it takes. And back in the days of the kings, if the king didn't like the way you approached him, he'd have your head. And that was it. There was no second guess, and he didn't have to go to a committee. He didn't have to take a vote. It's off with their head, and that's the way it was. Didn't make any difference whether they voted for it or didn't vote for it. He had his way. He was the king.
That's right.
Head of the house. Amen? Well, we are in the presence of the King of Kings, the Father of all fathers,
Yes.
Lord of all lords.
Yes.
And it would be awful if we would stand in front of him and then embarrass him by not giving him his due. Make him upset. Because the Bible says he's a jealous God.
Yes, he is.
Not only did the Bible say it, but the Bible says he's the one that said it. He said, I'm a jealous God.
Yes.
Amen. I just feel an awesome, I don't know if that's even the right word or not, to try to figure out the vastness of God and the intelligence that he has is so much above us. If you were to try to put it on a pinhead, that's us. The rest of the pin belongs to God. And to try to rationalize how God is so beneath him because his ways are so much higher than ours. And well, it's such an honor to be here again this morning, and I am honored that Brother Harrington would ask me to speak again today. It's always a pleasure and always an honor, especially with my family. If you would, let's go to Matthew, the 21st chapter. I love the song that we sang there, The Great I Am. All these songs that we're singing this morning, they have no idea what I'm preaching. I have no idea what they're going to be singing. And I'll tell you, it's awesome how God works. It is awesome. Matthew 21, verses 10 through 16. It says, and when he was coming to Jerusalem, all the city was moved. Boy, that's something when God comes in.
Yep.
If the city could be moved. Saying, who is this? Now, they were moved before they even knew who he was. Wouldn't that be something to come in church? The power is just so strong. But what is that I feel?
Come on.
What's that power that I can feel? The rest of the church said, it's Jesus. I said, who is this? And the multitude said, this is Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth of Galilee. And Jesus went into the temple of God. Notice it says the temple of God. And cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves. Now here's what I like. And he said unto them, it is written, my house. All I know is God's house. That tells the same but one God, right?
That's right.
My house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. When the chief priests and scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying in the temple and saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were sore displeased, and said unto him, here's how what these say. And Jesus said unto them, yea, have ye never read, out of the mouth of babes and sucklings thou hast perfected praise. Something so simple. Now, the title that I've given this, I think most of us have probably heard somebody say this, at least Mama say this when we were kids. Wait till your father gets home. Wait till your father gets home. Things change when Daddy gets home. Amen. Let's give the Lord a very big hand clap of praise. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. your neighbor a high five and tell them, wait till Daddy gets home.
Wait till Daddy gets home.
Wait till Daddy gets home.
Amen. I remember those words as if they were said yesterday because I knew there was a beating coming. That phrase is only used whenever there's correction to be done or change to be done. And now, don't get me wrong, Mama had a switch. Mama could take care of a lot of things. But boy, when it got out of Mama's hands, it was Daddy who come home. There were several things that scared me when Dad came outside the obvious beating. I knew what kind of mood he was going to be in. He'd just been working all day. The last thing he wanted when he come home was trouble. Last thing he wanted, he didn't care about what all went on in the house as long as there was no complaints. That's fine. Just give me my meal, my evening newspaper, and my chair, and I'll be fine. Yep. Daddies want quiet. They don't want conflict. They just want quiet. Look, I've worked all day, and look, let's just get along. Yep. You make Mama happy, and I'll be happy. Yep. And so when I was reading this, I couldn't help but go to that, wait till Daddy gets home. Because here's what was going on. Jesus was on his way to the temple. And just, if you read just above that, he's entering into the city. The disciples was announcing in front of him that here comes the king, you know, and people were throwing palm branches out in the street, and he's riding on a donkey, pulling a colt along beside him, and saying Hosanna to the king and all of that. And he's making a triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And so this was orchestrated by him. This was his move. This was his idea. He told his disciples, go out and you'll find colt and donkey tied up out there. He said, go get them, and if they ask you, just tell them the master has a need of them. I got to have them. Right. And so all of this is orchestrated by Jesus himself. He wants people to know who he is, how he comes riding in on a little donkey. And some people, well, the whole city is moved. They're waving palm branches. Well, we got Jesus of Nazareth coming in. Though some didn't know who he was, they only knew him by reputation. Right. That he was Jesus of Nazareth, and he healed folks. He was a good guy, and many miracles were brought by him. And he's on his way to the temple. He's showing people it's time to go to church. That's right. As he goes into the church, remember, this is his house. I'm coming home. Yep. I'm coming and I'm expecting something when I get home. When he walked in the doors of the church, it wasn't like it was the last time he was there. Because if you read back on farther, you find out that before this, he was on his way to the temple, and he come across some people that had pulled a woman out who was caught in adultery. And he's writing on the ground and giving them a lesson, telling them about forgiveness and teaching them about who he is and what he expected, that he was the Son of God, and he's explaining himself. Yes. And he's giving them a lesson, and he heals people back then, even in the temple. This time he comes back in the temple, and while he's away and while he's gone, things start happening in the temple that wasn't there before. There were some things you see sometimes when the master is gone, when Daddy's gone. And even in a church, when the preacher is gone, there are people that won't show up that would only show up if the preacher's there. Come on. They get a headache, they get sick, or they just find some kind of reason why I'm not going to be there. Well, he won't know I'm not there because he's not going to be there. And things start changing. Just atmosphere changes. One of the hardest things for me to do when I was assisting Brother Singleton in Florence was when he was out of town, I knew that I'd have a small crowd because nobody would show up. It wasn't that I was a bad preacher, I don't guess, and it wasn't that he was a better one or a worse one, but he was the daddy of the house. Right. And when Daddy's gone, people try to get away with some stuff. Yep. The rules are, some people think the rules don't apply anymore. That, well, he'll never find out or he won't know. I'm going to tell you something. When Daddy comes home, he notices things.
That's right.
A man or Daddy is a creature of habit. Now, I could go to your house, Brother Harrington, and I would not know. And I wouldn't notice if your easy chair was moved or if your furniture had been moved around. I wouldn't know that because it's not my house.
That's right.
But if I go to my house and the table has been moved and I stub my toe because I wasn't expected to be there,
Look out.
things, me and the missus is going to have a discussion.
That's right.
If I get up in the middle of the night and I come back and the bed's gone, I know there's something wrong in my house.
Yep.
I just know some things.
That's right.
I'm not the brightest bulb in the house, but sometimes, there is things that I know. When I go to the kitchen table and I sit down and there's no chair there, there's a problem.
There's a problem. That's right.
They used to be there. When my children were growing up in our house, my wife made sure that this was Daddy's chair.
Yeah.
This is where Dad sits at the table. This is Dad's stuff. This belongs to Dad. Don't touch it. This is Dad's brush. This is his comb. This kind of thing. And they were taught to respect and don't touch Daddy's stuff. Unless you want to hear something from Daddy, you go on. And so this is how Jesus is. He knows his home.
Right.
Now keep in mind now, this is the Old Testament. Even though Jesus is there, he's still there under the law. He hasn't gone to the cross yet. So there's law. In those days, there used to be sacrifices that were given. There was a form, there was a certain way that the tabernacle had to be set. The furnishings had to be in a particular place all the time. You had to enter a certain way. The priest couldn't just go in and haphazardly, but he had his ritual he had to go through.
Right.
This was the setup that God had set up with Moses, how to have a tabernacle, how church was supposed to be, how you were supposed to act in church, how you addressed God in the church, how you offered up sacrifice in the church. This was God's setup. It wasn't man's setup.
That's right. That's right.
God orchestrated this, and if anybody came into the house or came to the tabernacle and tried to do it any other way than what God had designed it to do, they were graveyard dead just like that.
Yes. That's right.
Now, after all of this time, Jesus comes to the house, his house, and he's expecting certain things in his house. It's not to be a house of merchandise. It was not to have money changers. It wasn't to have a bunch of thieves in his house. But when Daddy's gone, I noticed that in this particular case, thieves started creeping in and getting into the best parts of the strategic places in the house.
Yep.
They were taking over the platform. They were taking over the entranceway. They were taking over a different place. They started doing things that had nothing to do with church whatsoever.
That's right.
Had money changers that were exchanging Roman currency for temple currency because the Roman currency wasn't good enough to offer for sacrifice. And so they were making a profit exchanging money. They had thieves in there that would take different parts of the church and start taking over. People who started robbing, when it said thieves, they weren't robbing each other necessarily, but they were robbing from God.
Right.
Robbing what he had designed it to be.
Yep.
He was robbing them of their praise, robbing them of their worship. Thieves that would take anything rather than have a move of God in the church.
Come on.
They hadn't had a move of God. God hadn't been in that church since the last time he was there. And during that time, the church became stale. It became used for everything except worship, except for praise. It had everything. They even had children in there because the Bible was talked about it that we just read. Can you imagine the children of those people that are, and they are being taught to change money, taught to be thieves, taught not to rob, taught not to do these things. And so Jesus comes in, he finds this. And I noticed that right away he didn't what do you call it? Didn't stop and ponder. He didn't wonder. He didn't ask for a committee. He didn't go to the deacon board. He didn't do any of those things. But immediately he started changing things.
Right.
Because there's something about the presence of God when it comes into his house. He's going to take charge.
Right.
And he'll drive out all of those and drive out anybody that's not going to do what he expects to be happening there.
That's right.
I've come to church many times, many different places, different congregations, different places, and gone in, and sometimes it just rubs me the wrong way, pardon me just for a moment, when I see cell phones and see things going on whenever God is in the house.
Come on.
And there's an opportunity to worship Him. An opportunity to get needs met. An opportunity to get the best that God has to offer.
Right.
And we walk into a house nonchalantly. No prayer, no worship. We've stole all from God that He has designed the house to have.
Yes.
And we walk into a place and we don't worship Him and we don't give Him the glory. We don't give Him His due. We don't respect His house.
Right.
Now, I'll tell you something. If you come to my house and you just walk up to the refrigerator and pull out a steak and start cooking it on the stove, you got a problem. You're not giving my house respect.
Come on.
You walk into our house and you start turning furniture over, throw ashes in the floor and stuff like that, my wife's going to give you a problem. And if she gives you a problem, then I'm going to have a problem.
Right.
There is a respect that you give when you go into someone's house.
Right.
And when I come into God's house, He deserves all the respect I can muster up. He deserves everything that I can give. Because I'm in the Master's house.
Yes.
It's His house.
Yes.
I'm parking my legs under His table.
Right.
This
That's
is
right.
a kingdom. It is the kingdom of God.
Yes.
Not a house per se, but it is His kingdom. He is the king.
Yes.
Right.
And because He is the king and we are in His kingdom, we have to get rid of all of our rights as a citizen of where we came from.
Right.
Oh.
All right.
I'm no longer carrying a passport of the United States, but I'm carrying the title of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I'm His child, and I go by His rules. I go by His authority, not by anybody else. I don't have the right to go into His house and make the rules.
Right.
Right.
All right, He had already had the temple set up. He knew how it was supposed to be. He knew where the furnishings were. But when He walked in, where the offerings should have been, where the golden laver should have been, where He had money changers, had thieves. So He started turning over tables, started running them out and drove them out. The Bible said drove them out.
That's right.
I believe He was upset.
Oh, yeah.
And He told them off. He said, look, you've made it a den of thieves. My house is going to be a house of prayer, a house of worship.
Right.
Yes.
Amen.
That's what it's meant to be. And you've made it a den of thieves. And I wonder how many times we fall guilty to that.
Right.
Come on.
Worried about our own agendas. Worried about about us. See, when He went in there, it was no longer a place of giving.
Come on.
But it was a place where you take.
Right.
They started taking, making profit. It was all about me. About, they're thinking only about themselves and nobody else. And the only place I know of that there's only room for one person, that's the casket.
Uh-huh.
You're never so alone that you're the only important thing in the world.
Right.
We don't come to church for us.
That's right.
We come for Him.
Yes.
Amen.
That's right.
This is His house.
This is His
We don't come in here to feel good and feel fuzzy-wuzzy, though that's all good.
Yeah.
We come in and we worship, and God blesses us because we worship.
Right.
God blesses us because He chooses to bless us.
That's right.
But we don't come in here to get the blessing. We come in here to bless Him.
Amen.
And if we bless Him, the rest is all right. Well, what happened? The minute He run everybody out, He said, I'm going to rearrange this house.
Amen.
Where there used to be worship, I'm putting worship back in.
Yeah.
Where there used to be praise singers, I'm putting praise singers back in.
Yes.
Where the word used to be preached instead of exchanging money, I'm going to put preaching back in the church.
Yeah.
I'm going to put good teaching back in the
Yes.
church.
Right.
But most of all, we're going to have praise and we're going to have worship
Yes.
because that's what the house was designed for.
Right.
When you go by the house, I want you to hear worship and I want you to hear praise coming out of my house. This is my house, said the Lord.
Yep.
My house. The minute he run them out, they started having revival. And the people that were the churchgoers, this was the congregation. Now, he's already run the thieves out. He's run the money changers out. So who's left? Would have been the worshipers, right? Would have been the congregation, the churchgoers, the everydayers, the ones that always show up, the ones that pay their tithe. Those are the ones that were still left.
Yep.
And so the lame and the blind and the halt and all of that, they come in, the Bible says he started healing them.
Amen.
Yep.
Revival was taking place.
That's right.
God was moving in the house again. Once again, it was doing and being exactly what he designed it to be for. And the church folks, they got upset.
Wow.
They got mad at it. The people who were the regulars, the ones that quit worshiping, the ones that stayed and they allowed the money changers to come in, and they allowed the sin to come into the place. They allowed the thieves to come in. They had the right. They could have out-worshipped. They could have stayed true to Daddy's house, but they were moved because they allowed that kind of stuff to come into the church. And when they allowed it to come in, it affected the whole congregation.
Right.
Yep.
We have to be careful who we associate with sometimes. I'm not saying that we alienate ourselves from non-believers. I'm not saying that.
Right.
Come on.
But what I am saying is you got to be careful.
Right.
Yeah.
Because sin, dirt always goes to the clean. The clean never seems to go to the dirt.
That is true.
I've never seen my wife put in a white suit and come out black in a washing machine. It's always the other way around. You've got to get into the cleaning part to get the dirt out.
That's right.
Amen.
Yep.
I wish my suit would clean it by itself. Don't. I get up next to cobwebs and it gets all over me.
Uh-huh.
What I'm saying is we have the ability to stop it.
That's right.
All we have to do is just do what God designed it to be for.
Amen.
Yes.
We worship Him. I'm not against fundraisers and things like that. I'm not. But we've got to remember what the house of God is for.
Right.
Yep.
We are here to worship Him.
Yeah.
Most of us and most of the human race, we've got 6 days that we'll do anything we want to do with, and then struggle to come into God's house
Right.
for just a few minutes
Amen.
and worship Him and say, thank you for the 6 days you gave me.
Right. Come on.
And here I am in your house today, Lord. I can give you my worship. I can give you the best that I've got. And then sit there and look at my cell phone, Facebook, or whatever. Text. I've seen them text back and forth in church from one to the other. What really is something that if you're sitting next to each other and text
Yeah.
to each other.
Yep.
Thieves. When he's talking about thieves, it's us who rob God
Right.
of His worship, rob Him
Yes.
of His praise, rob
My,
Him
my,
of...
my.
He couldn't do, the Bible says he couldn't do any works when he was at home. We are the ones that allow the work to be done. God wants to do it, but it's our attitude. It's how much respect do we give Him when we come into the house of God?
Yes.
The more respect we give, the more blessings we get. I remember somebody told my wife one time, she said, boy, you sure are lucky to have this and that and this and that. She said, yeah, the harder my husband works, the luckier we get. The harder we work for God, the more blessings you'll get.
That's right.
We don't do it to get the blessing.
Right.
It just goes with the territory.
That's right.
You know how hard it is to cuss somebody out if you're worshiping? You can't love and hate at the same time.
Right.
That's right.
So if you get to a place where things are just so disgruntled you can't stand anymore, how about just loving somebody? How about just calling on God? How about just giving it to who it is?
That's right.
And let Him take care of it, because it's us who have the problem,
Right.
not God.
Come on.
Right.
So immediately, they started worshiping and they started and singing Hosanna. The kids started in the church, the stupid church. Says, do you hear this, Jesus? Can you believe what these kids are doing? Disgusting. I wondered how long had God been gone? That all of a sudden worship become disgusting
Right.
to the congregation. That they would rather have the parties, and they would have rather had the money changer, would have rather had the business than have a miraculous move of God where people were actually getting healed. There was something going on in this church. There was a revival like nobody's business going on. Blind eyes were being open, and deaf were hearing, and the lame were walking.
Come on.
And they got upset because there was a move of God in His own house. So you hear all this worship, all this singing these kids are doing. Yeah, I sure do, said God. And I don't think they realized it, but them kids doing the worship and the praise is what was making Jesus do what He was doing.
That's right.
Because it doesn't make any difference who it is, what your age is, how old, how fat, skinny, short, tall you are, how rich or poor. It doesn't make any difference. All He said, can you love me?
Amen.
Can you worship me? I'll do for you if you can do for me. When I come home, my kids were, well, now my grandkids, I get the same thing from them, but my kids, I'll never forget. You would think that they hadn't seen me forever. I'd come home from work, Daddy's home, and one of them would run out there and he'd grab you by the leg and he'd get you by the arm and you're dragging them in the house. That's worship.
Yep.
I didn't kick them off and throw them away. I'd grab hold of them. I loved that.
Amen.
Yes.
I come home, man, you could grab anything you want to, and I'm just hanging on to love you, because that was worship, that was praise, that was giving me adoration, that was giving me respect. Honey, when I come to the house of God, I want to grab a hold of coat, tail, leg, a hand, a thumb, a finger, whatever I can get a hold of God. Any part of God I can get a hold of Him, and I know that Daddy's home. And I'd rather Daddy be home than hear that phrase, wait till your father gets home. But when Daddy came home, boy, things changed.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you something. We can have sorry church if you want to have sorry church, and we can have depressing church if you want to have depressing church. You can have all of that stuff, but honey, wait till Daddy gets home. Things are going to be. You can bring all your junk into the house. You can bring all your heartache. You can bring all your disgruntled attitude into it. But wait till Daddy gets home. When He gets home and Jesus gets in the house, things start changing. You'll see healing. You'll see deliverance. You'll see worship.
Yes.
That's the whole idea for coming to church, is to give Him His praise.
Yes.
Come on, let's give the Lord a hand. The people were selfish. They were selfish with their talent. They were selfish with their money. They were selfish with their giving. They were selfish with everything that they had. They were just selfish. Preacher, I don't like the way you talk. You got it too hot in there. You got it too cold. The chairs are too hard. The place looks terrible. You got 2x4s here, and you got plastic hanging there.
Come on.
Floor ain't painted. Glass is broken. Ceiling tile falling down. How can you worship in a place like that? It has nothing to do with the building.
Come on.
I never saw where Jesus changed anything in the temple as far as the decor goes. What He changed was some attitudes.
Come on.
What He changed was, listen, so the Bible says where 2 or 3 are gathered together. Didn't say in a temple, didn't say any place that said, you got to get there in my name. You come together to worship me. You come to give me the honor, give me the due. And then when you look out here and you see all that God has created, I don't care how far you look, how good your eyesight is, you cannot see the end of what God has created.
That's right.
And And He did it for you. He did it for me. He said, all you can do, you can't say thank you. You can't take time enough to just say, hey, Dad, thanks. I appreciate what you've done.
Right.
Now, I didn't fully appreciate when my dad was working and I was a kid at home. I didn't fully appreciate Dad's hard work. Though I knew he went to work. I knew he was doing the providing. I did enjoy the supper. I enjoyed breakfast.
Right.
I enjoyed the clothes on my back, and I enjoyed the roof over my head. I enjoyed all of that thing. But as I grew, and as I got older, and realized that this stuff didn't come from nothing, that Dad had to work. And when Dad got sick and was not able to work, and all of a sudden we started losing things and couldn't get some things, I started to appreciate what Dad had done. Now, sometimes we'll get some people that have come to church and they're new. Never been here before. And maybe never even been in church before.
Right.
You can't expect them to appreciate like you appreciate.
That's right.
And they'll never appreciate it if you don't show your appreciation.
That's right. Come on. Right.
We have got to be Pentecostal wherever we are.
Right.
We've got to be God's kids wherever we are.
That's right.
If you go to work, I don't care where you are, what situation you're in, you're still one of God's kids. You still belong to the kingdom. When I leave here and go to Europe, I took a passport, but I was living there and I had to go by their laws. I had to go by their rules. I had to live by their money system.
Yep.
I couldn't drive their cars. I didn't know which side to drive on. I just picked the yellow, the white line down the middle. And just take it. You went by whoever's country you live in. That's the rules you go by.
Yeah.
Right.
We are inducted into the King of Kings, to the Jesus kingdom.
Right.
Yes.
He came preaching the kingdom of God.
Uh-huh.
Isn't that what it says?
Yeah.
Like I'm preaching the kingdom of God. He started telling the kingdom of heaven is like this. The kingdom of God is like that. Or it's
Right.
likened into this. I'm trying to give you an idea of what the kingdom of God is all about.
Right.
Because you're going to be in that kingdom.
Right.
And if you're going to be in that kingdom, become a citizen, there's some things you need to learn. If you're going to become a citizen
Right.
of my kingdom.
Come on.
You're going to have to learn how to dress, how to walk, how to talk, how to live, how to act.
Come on.
Right.
Because you're going to be leaving your citizenship. And you're going to be taking on a brand new citizenship.
All right.
Yes.
Now, that means I don't have the right to change your Bill of Rights.
Right.
I don't have a right to change your laws. I don't have that right.
Come on.
Because I'm not a natural born citizen. That's why we have to be reborn again.
Yes.
Because we take on a new birth in a new city, in a new kingdom, and we act, talk, walk different, and you cannot bring what is in the old country into the new country.
Come on.
You can't bring the sin that you have. You can't bring your sinful life that you had. You can't bring your attitudes that you had. You can't bring your ideas and your theology and your philosophy of the past and bring it into God's kingdom. He already knew more than you did before you ever got there.
That's
Come on.
He knows how to be God.
Yes.
He's been God a long time.
Yes.
And I'm at His mercy.
Yes.
And the reason I came here to begin with was to get out of my old lifestyle.
Come on.
To get rid of all of that junk that I had hanging on to me. That was the whole reason I came to church to begin with. I wanted something better than what I had. I wanted to have freedom. People came to America because they could be free.
Yes.
Well, that isn't freedom like God's freedom is.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen.
Am I making sense?
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
Just wait till Daddy gets home. And you see things change. Remember when I came to the altar years ago, and the change that happened in my life when Daddy got home. You're talking about a freedom. I didn't know, I no longer had to worry about where my substance was coming from. I knew Daddy would provide. And see, that's our problem now. We don't trust in Daddy. We forget He's at work all the time. We forget all He has to do is talk to Him. Everything's all right. I tell Daddy, I need a new car. He said, that ain't what you need. See, when I was a kid at home, I thought at 16 years old, Dad ought to buy me a car. It was his duty to buy me a car. I'm 16. I got a driver's license. That entitles me for Daddy to buy me a car. That's the way I look at it. Went to the barber shop and I got a lesson I'll never forget. Went in the barber shop in southern Indiana. And man and his son come in there. I guess it was his son. Anyway, he had hair down to his shoulders. Coming in there to get a haircut. And that's back when all men were wearing long hair back in the day. And so he sat there and he made mention to his dad and said, Dad, when are you going to buy me a car? I'm 16. And he said, I'll buy you a car when you get that haircut off. And he said, well, Jesus had long hair. He said, yeah, and he walked everywhere he went too. We get the idea that we ought to have things our way. But we don't. We're in His kingdom. We need to give Him His due.
That's right.
So when we come into the house, and if we ever expect visitors to understand what's going on, it's what monkeys see, monkey do sort of thing. If we worship, they'll want to worship. If we are happy, they'll want to be happy. So what is this God you've got? What is this thing you've got?
Come on.
What makes you so joyous? I know that you've got bills, and I know that they're repolling this and they're turning your lights up. How can you stay so happy all the time? Because of Daddy's kingdom.
That's right.
That's why. Let's stand.